Welcome back to the Survival Gardener Minute. I'm David the Good, and today's question I just covered in a live stream, but I'm going to give you the really short version of it. Today's question is from Tamara Rose, who asks about companion planting. She read about planting nasturtiums underneath tomatoes, but she found that the nasturtiums died out before the tomatoes really got rolling, and wonders, what should we do for companion planting? So here's my recommendation. Plant for resiliency, plant for redundancy, and plant to see what works. So if you're going to companion plant, you might read in a book, that carrots like to grow next to this and tomatoes like to grow next to this or whatever. I'll tell you what, most plants do better in a polyculture than they do in a monoculture. That seems to be the way the system was designed. So if you want to plant one thing, just plant 15 things. Some years you're going to get a good yield on one plant and a poor yield on another. Some years your tomatoes will do well where your nasturtiums die, and sometimes those polycultures that you thought were like the perfect companion planting because you read it in a book is not going to work with your climate. So as the preppers say, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So what you should have is redundancy. So plant, if you want to plant a peach tree, plant 3 peach trees. Plant a bunch of berries underneath them. Plant a ground cover underneath them that's also edible. Maybe throw some sweet potatoes underneath them. Depending on your climate, maybe you grow some grapes up into some of the branches. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do. Put some gooseberries over here, some Nanking cherries in your hedge, and then over the top of the hedge you might have some pear trees, and you prune the pear trees, and then you put some horseradish around the base and some comfrey, and you let your daughter plant flowers in there. When you have a bunch of these things going on together, you end up with a healthier ecosystem. You end up with less pest problems. You may not have the highest individual yield on each plant, but what you get is a higher yield from the entire system. And if you plant a bunch of seeds all in one garden and just see what happens, you'll find that nature selects out the stuff that doesn't work. So you overplant and see what dies and see what grows and see what does well, and you'll rapidly determine which plants seem to like each other and how they like each other, and figure out what stuff is going to work in your climate. So that's what I would recommend for companion planting. Not specifics, but kind of a way of using nature to figure out what's going on. Plant a whole bunch of stuff, figure out what likes to grow next to each other, and plant more than you think you need. And then if you get abundance, you can share it with the neighbors. But if you get a late frost or an early frost or a bad year or climate change or whatever else, you have a redundant system. If you just wanted one apple tree and you planted one apple tree and then it gets a canker and dies in its 6th year, that's terrible. Plant 3 apple trees, plant 4 peach trees, plant a couple of pear trees, plant a couple of chestnuts, plant 5 pecans, whatever. Plant a whole bunch of stuff, and then let that system have redundancy and create its own ecosystem over time, and you're going to have something no matter what year it is. It's much better to have too much than it is too little. So companion plant and just see what happens and see what works. It's kind of fun. So God bless you all. I'll catch you next time, and until then, may your thumbs always be green.